It's that
all
time.
yours.
Thank you. It's all that time of the year again.
It's that time.
So I'll start with what's up on the screen. I'll try and keep it up on the screen as well. So I just call this page uncontrollable costs. It's the second last page. Basically, at one point in our budget session, we talked about inflation and what village faces. So since then, I've started putting a page aside, which just talks about our general infrastructure costs. So hydro went up 1.8%. Fortis, hard to pin them down on what the actual increase is, but it will be inflationary at the minimum, 2%, likely more because they split it up delivery and commodity. So though natural gas commodity prices have come down overall, in the States more so than us, but there will be an increase there. ICBC, 6.3% in 2019, not very clear about 220. They tried to put in a driver experience thing, which doesn't quite work for fleet. So they reversed that and then sent us a renewal. So I'll have more details as the renewals proceed. Property insurance, big increase, 2 reasons. Water treatment plant is going on. The second reason, the rates have shot up this year as well. So we got a double whammy this year, so that's a pretty big increase. Our insurance provider did get bought out by another one. So I don't know whether the factors, I was assured that doesn't factor into it, but we'll, as usual, if you remember a couple of years ago, I went out and looked for other insurance providers, was able to get us, I think $20,000 decrease. So maybe the next set when we're looking at things, we look at a property provider as well. Now, we are very happy with the administration of claims, right? So there's that part too. And that was evident when we got our fire money back, all we spent on it, so we did quite well in it. I have a cold, so I'll be coughing a little bit. Saying numbers, no. Payroll increase per contract, 2%. Pension is fairly stable, 9.8. It's come down slightly compared to 10.4 last year. UBC benefits, UBCM benefit, group benefits are stable too. They went up a few years ago and we had a discussion with them and now they've kept them fairly stable since. WorkSafe is a large increase, 1.4 to 1.81, so 0.4. And MSP is eliminated, but we have employee health tax, which we need to pay. The bill is approximately $19,000. So I'll have to file a whole new return. It's a whole process now. It's like GST, I have to file employee health tax. And so I think it's due soon. I got an email, they send me reminders all the time. So I'll have to, when I do the actual filing, then we know for sure what it is exactly. It won't be much different than my estimate. The second page, now we start getting into the nitty-gritty of things, is the project page I'd like to focus on. So I'm going to shift.
Second to the last for council.
Yep. 17? Yes.
It's right at the back. So starting with the WTP scope increase. So as you know, our intake project got approved, so the money left over, we could utilize it. We don't want to return anything to, it sounds bad, but we don't want to return things to the federal government and the provincial. We want to use it if we can. So we were able to extend it for the intake and the backup power. So those are the costs. Cost to the village will be about 364, but we'll completely utilize our 800,000 approximately left over. Next one down is curling club upgrades. And this is a little bit lighter on the font because we need to decide whether we're moving forward with it. the costs have started coming in. There's a letter attached from Brian with the 3 quotes which came in. And I think we are at the point where we need to make the decision. Some things have changed. There is an application the Culling Club is putting for NDIT to get some more funds. So we hope we'll get that, but the costs are there. And Brian just informed me that the engineer looking at the building has come back, and we need to put in a couple of supports, beams, I-beams across. So that'll be about a 10K more cost, so that we can put the stuff on the roof to adequately support it. So give or take at 10K, subtract if we get NDIT, I'll be positive about it, optimistic that we do get something, and then we move forward. So the decision has come to budget about this. We've talked about it, but the decision is before council. The next one, so we'll look at it in detail, and if you disagree, you can let me know, no or yes to move forward. Sewage lift station project cost is 1.38. We're getting 1.38. I've never seen 100% grant, so that's fantastic.
Now, this is the one that we went for the 75% grant, and we were refused on that, and we went for the 100% and we got that one.
That's right.
The ways of the grant gods are strange.
Next is the hot tub replacement grant, and I'm not sure whether that's 100% or 75. When the paper comes back, we know for sure, because it was approved jointly with the sewage lift station. So
If we get that.
If we get that, yes.
So that's
Same
either
with the lift
75
station,
or
If we
100.
get that.
That's
Yes, if we get that. So sorry, my mistake. I have to say qualified till Province sends out notices. Asset management. I have a cold, that's why I have an excuse. Asset management, we just finished the last project. I filed FCM paperwork, and that project was for approximately, we were allowed 50% and 80% or 50%. We'll get about 25,000 in reimbursements from them. So that's done. I'm hoping to move for the next phase after that, next year, just continue and developing, moving forward. And the big positive of that is we get reimbursed for my time. So that's excellent. Usually grants won't reimburse us for our time. Heat alert response planning project, that is going to happen this year. We are assured, so that'll move on as well. Next one is evacuation route planning. That has been received. I have to follow up with, we were waiting for the province again, a different department for their LiDAR data. And I need to follow back and see where they are. Like I keep following up and it keeps getting postponed. But we need it. It's a very detailed topographical representation, and we need that for road design if you're going to be more accurate. It's best to have that, so we follow it. In case it doesn't go through, we'll still, I'll talk to the engineers and we'll still proceed through it, do a walk and move forward. Because at some point, they've extended it once, I don't think they'll extend it again. Subdivision servicing bylaw, remaining, I'm saying that this is ongoing, it's finishing up now. I think I'll reduce that to about 5K left over for this coming year instead of 10K. And it's just the remaining parts of winding that up. Fire training, we've applied to a UBCM grant for 100% for $25,000. And we'll see how that comes through. NDIT is a repetitive grants every year. And capacity building is approximately 50,000. We applied. We usually get slightly less depending on, but this year we are trying to get more, and we're working to we'll be filing our report soon, seeing how much we get. But, our DCO worked very hard to communicate with them to make sure they let us, and kept everything in writing, which we found actually helps out later in the process. Same with business facade, we've got 15,000 carried over from last year. Again, it's not very much subscribed in Ashcroft, but it's something if businesses want to pursue. And then the Love Ashcroft, $1,200. NDIT grant writer is going to continue this year as well. So 10,500, the village share is 2,500. We have moved forward with the intern position grant for NDIT, and village costs would be about 20,000. So we pay the benefits and 25% of the cost. So I'm going to kind of, so one net FTE addition before we get into it. There's a number of labor changes. Maybe I should pull it together a little bit. We're looking at a new fire chief, right? And that's before you to decide. The costing of it is because it's the timing when it starts.
Just to clarify, that's not a new fire chief, it's a different position, right?
If I could clarify, it's more protective services. It includes
Right.
bylaw control, animal control, emergency program coordinator, and fire chief.
Thank you. So the cost of that position, so that's one FTE. Talking about in terms of monetary. So this year about half of it will hit our books, and next year it will be fully hitting our books. The second position we are looking at is a laborer, and that has been discussed prior in terms of the changes in our labor force and getting the transition around labor. So we're looking at another position and the demands of the water treatment plant. And that was planned over time, and that's why some of the rates in water went up to be able to pay for. So that's a second FTE we're looking at, but it's only initially looked at for the summer. Before this discussion continues, just keep in mind, please don't mention any names, or we have to keep that information. Let's talk just FTEs. And so this helps us plan for the retirements and everything else coming forward in our labor pool. So a little bit of proactive planning has been done by the CAO, to try and get things moving here. The third thing we are looking at is our deputy corporate officer moving to the corporate officer role. The deputy corporate officer already does a lot of corporate officer roles, but that transition will entail some cost. Then we're also looking at a summer intern. The summer intern paid by NDIT with 20,000 our cost. Right? Lastly but not least, we are looking at a public works supervisory role. Right, so that has come before council earlier. So that hasn't been costed in today's FTEs because that's still in discussion. So fair number of change to our labor pool. Currently we have 13 employees, so we are looking at 2 more FTEs at the minimum. Right, so.
Now, just to clarify, the new summer student role would be in addition to the 2 summer students that we traditionally have had for the past however many years.
Yeah, this is more the intern, yes.
Okay.
And that's paid mostly by NDIT, so we incur just the.
Should we be in the office?
It will be in the office, yes.
And I just want to say too, I think looking at changing the deputy corporate officer to the corporate officer is something I think would be a good idea, given the duties and responsibilities.
So I wanted to lay all this down, so it sounds a little bit, because the numbers differ, right? Because it's a transition year. So I just wanted to talk about the labor changes as a unit. And those costs are laid here. So when you look at your spreadsheet, if you go down, you've got below the NDIT, 50% to fire chief and 50% to public works. And that's assuming a 90,000 cost for one FTE, that's split amongst the two. So that's that impact, and then the summer student role is put in there for succession planning. And that's I shouldn't call it summer student, I should call it the laborer role. But it would be only available, it would be active only during the summer period. So it's no longer, I actually should have labeled it something else, it's the laborer role coming in. And that's the 21,667. And then, last but not least, we need to move forward with the reservoir land purchase in order to actually do that critical project to get our reservoirs, to get a second reservoir. That's a process, it's a long process, and the 5,000 set aside is to get the legal paperwork, appraisal, surveys, all that stuff in place. So, and start it. The purchase itself, we don't have the current figures, but we're starting to move on defining the property lines.
If I could just add to that, it's likely that the actual purchase will be probably years in the future, so it's not, that's why CFO Bella has not budgeted for that in this current year.
Please feel free to interrupt me because I'm covering everybody's area, and I appreciate that because you get further clarity.
This is the North Ashcroft Reservoir.
This is the North Ashcroft Reservoir, that's right.
Now, just out of interest, why years?
It will need to go through the Agricultural Land Commission.
Okay.
And it's an application that needs to be done by the TNRD. So there's first of all our application to the TNRD, and then the TNRD applies on behalf of municipalities. They've been granted that role by the Agricultural Land Commission. And so I can only take their word for it, but with their expertise, they have advised that it's likely to be a long and slow process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that enough of a list? Or
No, thank you.
And there's lots of other little things happening. And I'll move on to some of the other things. And we'll go to this last page, the Public Works project ranking. That's a little bit of a misnomer. I should start calling it other project rankings. This is the process how we deal with new initiatives of council. We generally, unless it's council's will to move otherwise, we put it in a priority list, and then we look at it at budget time and approve things which we've decided are critical, and defer other things to the next year's. Just to, limited resources, and we need to kind of fit all of that in. So in terms of our priorities this year, the critical ones we're intending to do, which includes, first one is community hall flooring for 20,000. Brian, please interrupt me anytime if you feel.
The 20,000, your worship, is basically kind of the best guess out there right now. We haven't had a contractor to come out and look at it as of this yet. But also with that, I do believe we're looking at 20,000 plus some grant from the OBID that are saying that they're interested or be willing to apply to this project.
And is this just because the floor is past its prime, or?
It is starting to lift in several sections and everything else, and it's one of those floors where guaranteed it's asbestos, so it will have to be covered. And we'll probably look at covering, not taking, but it's one of those gray areas. Hopefully we can just cover and lay over.
Right.
But yeah, it's starting to have with the noodles from the planking settling in different areas. It's getting hard to clean, and some of the floor is now starting to separate.
Like, yeah, I noticed that the last time I was in there was quite a long part of the seam between two places where it had lifted up. Thank you.
The next one is Lady Minto building, just office floors. The carpets have, they're there to catch our feet. So it's time to, for safety as well, it's reached a point where there are tears and stuff. We'll be moving towards doing that.
Well, that panel of carpet samples has been in this office for the 5 years I've been on council. So this is definitely overdue.
The next one is pool. The pool roof is leaking, as most of you are aware, quite significantly, and we need to replace it. So 50,000 has been set aside for that.
Just so your worship, you gotta know, we're also having problems with getting contractors to, because of the solar panels up there and removing rock and stuff. So we've contacted a couple of contractors and a couple of them shied away, so we're once again, where you think we can do this for it, is just getting the contractor in place to get things in ready. So that's why, as you're well aware, some people have complained about the dressing rooms having like a waterfall in a heavy rain event, but it's not that we're ignoring it, it's trying to get a contractor to come out and properly deal with the situation.
Are we generally successful in getting contractors from Kamloops, or do we have to go as far afield as, I don't know, Vernon, Kelowna?
Generally, we're successful with Kamloops.
Thank you.
Yeah, and my kids tell me it's a priority.
If my mom was here, she'd tell me it was a priority.
Pool skimmer grading, that's a usual, every year we replace some of it. Transportation, crosswalk and signage, $5,000 set aside. Water reservoir ladder replacement, $8,000. Reservoir Desert Hills property, that's the $5,000 we talked about in the project list. STP grading on walkway for sewage is another $6,400. Cover all to keep sludge dry, so we ship off our sludge now. And just to keep it dry, so that it's shipped off by weight, we need a coverall there. The next one is fairly substantial. It's the SCADA, that's the control programs. Increased reporting, they want different things measured, and the SCADA lets you control it's basically PCI controlling the systems going on in the sewage treatment plant, and we need to install that. And we're looking at that, and the estimate right now is 50,000.
It's a computer program?
So if I may, so what it is our plant over the years has had upgrades, and we're getting to a point now where we can, I won't say control everything, we have a hard time tying all our alarm systems in, our programming in to be able to monitor all this. And the next step for us is a SCADA program that we can draw it all into, and we can also have better control over, say, our air control, where the operator, right now, we just kind of, I won't say guess, we do monitor it, but at least he can adjust it and see it on a full-time constant monitoring and bring up history records and stuff on it, whereas at this point in time, we're not able to do this, so it's the next step for us in bringing the plant more in line.
So just to put it in perspective, every system now has SCADA on it, because everything's gotten computerized. We ran our sewage treatment plant for years on really old technology, so old that we couldn't get parts until we shifted on this last project we did. So we put centrifuges, we put controls, and it's just the next step of putting things in. And then there's a small public works front end bucket for our John Deere tractor for 6,000. So the total for critical projects is 203,000. There's one in high, the EV charger net, which I've thrown in as a neutral thing, which I think we might be able to move forward with the level 2 chargers in conjunction with that group called Charge Not. Thank you. So that'll be positive if we can get a couple of level 2 chargers. They might not, it's not the fast charger,
No.
it's the level 2 chargers we're talking about.
But these are the ones I understand. I mean, the fast chargers are great, but people are here for half an hour, whereas with the level 2s, it takes, depending on where your battery's at, the model, 4 to 6 to 7 hours. So that's where people get out, walk around, and see the town.
So I like to cover these lists first, because then we get into the detail, and what I do is take all these items and incorporate them into the budget, right? And now how we've covered them is by highlighting the areas which have changed, those are in yellow. So let's start with the taxes. And as usual, so I'll shift my screen to the budget. 2020 budget. My spreadsheet says 2019 down there. And it says 2020 up there. So you choose whichever. No. It's the 2020 budget. This is the draft copy. So, I'm looking for feedback, decisions, and then those will get incorporated in here and in the project list. So the first thing we are always aim for is to keep taxes increases very stable, so 2.5. This year we are challenged with a number of changes, as you were noticing. So I started off with 2.5% increase, and that taxes go to 1,064,000, and our taxable capital allowance, which we put aside in reserve, goes to 187. So we take some of our taxes, about 18%, and put them aside in reserves every year. Next one down, please interrupt me anytime if you have questions, like always. Services to other governments, this is a TNRD reimbursement to run the tender. It goes up by $2,000. That's all on what's on for page 1. Going to page 2, our bank interest has gone up significantly because bank interest rates have gone up significantly. But there's a cost on the other side of loans, which will increase just as fast and probably faster. And so the whole drive to try and pay things off early is going to really benefit us. And actually it has benefited us because you see the budget cost pressures, particularly for labor. We've been able to cover that partly because we've lowered the requirement of debt, and that's a huge cost saving. The other is that we generally over the 5 years increase our utility rates to be able to cover. So it's a bunch of planning. But that gives us, every time you pay things out, it frees up so much more money to be actually used for village operational purposes. So the goal remains the same, pay off everything, but as the projects finish, because we've kept up these projects every year. If you recall, this has been a busy, we've been doing things one after the other. This year again, we are very busy. At some point, we'll have to take a breather though, just as a, in terms of breather to actually manage the crew, stabilize the training, stabilize the processes, stabilize there's a lot which happens when you're adding things and constantly going maximum speed, right? So this year again is going to be maximum speed, but maybe next year we can reduce the number of things and focus on planning and succession and all of those other things which are very critically important. So back to the bank account interest. How did that conversation go from bank account to succession?
You did.
But, so I've increased the budget to correspond with what we got in actuals. Page 3.
Main page 4.
Oh, main page 4. My other corner says page 3. So I'll fix that. Page 4, transfer from unconditional grant from the government has increased, so I've increased it a little to correspond to that. Logan Lake revenue share, next one down, has increased, and I have increased it 5,000 in the budget as well. Federal government asset management transfer, I'm presuming 25,000 we'll get and we'll be successful again. Below that is a hot tub project. Revenues for the hot tub 150. Assuming the project is 172, we get 150. We might get more if we approve. Gas tax grant is back to normal. We won't get 250,000 again this year.
Can we have another election?
We could, we might. It is a minority government, so. So the grant is back to normal. The UBC grant, next one down is 50,000 for emergency measures, which is fire training and fire smart. Both have been applied for. We don't have the result, but I incorporated it into the budget.
Do you apply for first one?
Oh, we are in the process. of
We
it.
don't have a council resolution yet.
Oh, we don't have a resolution yet. So council is delayed, no. No, but that just, we haven't passed the deadline, so it will be in progress, but I have incorporated it. So budget, I try to anticipate the maximum, that's why budget tends to balance out really well as the last couple of years, because I try and incorporate everything I foresee happening. It is a challenging task, because lots of things change, right? But we've done so far, well so far. And then one step down is the 25,000 EV charger grant. The one highlighted below that is the balancing account that I use at the end because we are mandated to have a balanced budget. So whether I pull from surpluses or put in surpluses, that's what I use at the end. Curling Cup project is the next one, and this is where we've come to the decision point. Are we proceeding in it, or should it be eliminated from the next budget?
Okay. We don't have to make the decision tonight, this is just for us to consider, or is it to make tonight?
I would let the CAO take the lead on that, but I would like to finalize the budget at some point, and it's a significant item.
So, if I could just speak to that, remembering this is a committee of the whole, so the committee can make recommendations, but you can't make decisions. So what you would do is refer your final budget decisions to the council meeting. If you finalize those decisions tonight, you could actually move to place them on the agenda, the upcoming council meeting agenda, and finalize them there, or we could put them into a future council meeting.
Thank you. So I'm leaving it in the budget for the time being. So it will go as a package for approval at some point.
Without the 10 that is still unfunded, right?
Without the 10, which is, yeah, this is all showing net funding. So we'll move forward with that. So here I've outlined the source of funds was capital, gas tax, and our reserves. So this is the full cost as anticipated, but it includes our own funds getting pulled in from reserves or surplus.
And this would mean clearing out the capital asset replacement fund, correct?
That is correct.
Your worship, if I can speak to that just a little bit more, there is some of your quotes that you've seen on the reports are $150,000. Plus you're gonna look at electrical upgrades, which could be another $5,000-10,000 plus your engineering costs, so it is gonna be.
And we've just received the support we were talking about in the discussion of things earlier. So I will modify that to incorporate now that we're starting to get, what Brian's talking about, electrical, 5,000, support, another 10,000, so you have a full picture. So this number is going to change now to incorporate that, now that we have the numbers today. Page 5. So 15,000 for, did I miss something? Okay. So travel, elected officials travel. Our bylaw needs modification. Policy needs modification in terms of cost, because realistically UBCM costs have far surpassed those. So I'm increasing the budget to 15,000, but the policy needs to be changed to reflect some of those costs. And perhaps we need to discuss how we can reduce some of those costs in different ways.
And just for council's information and background, the 2018 actual of 6649 there were only 2 council members who went to UBCM that year because it was an election year and because council members were not standing for re-election. So of course, last year we had most of council go to UBCM, so I think we do need to look at who goes to UBCM every year, because I don't know that it's practical to send all 5 council members and the CAO to UBCM every year.
So what we have done is tried to book the hotel early, and we have gotten, like right now, a year before, and we got some off, so it won't be as expensive this year, but still, you know, I budgeted accordingly. It's ferries are more expensive, going there is more expensive, hotels are more expensive. The next one down is admin salaries and wages. And this includes all the changes in admin. We were talking about new intern, a village share of benefits there, changing role. All of that is included in that. So last year our actuals were lower, 280, but that was because we had a number of months where we were operating without a CEO. That tends to save money.
Yeah.
And without a DCO as well.
And yeah. So I've increased the budget from 320 to 370 there. Admin legal fees paid, it's just down a couple of thousand. It's not very material, but you know, I've kept it mainly the same. The next one down, consulting fees, I've reduced significantly. We are utilizing much less in consultants, you know, for various things, so it's reduced to 5,000. But this varies year to year, you know, depending on what is necessitated for certain federal reports or provincial or whatever requirements get downloaded on us. We sometimes need to spend more there. Public relations is increased to 9,000. We do community appreciation barbecues, and we are interacting a lot more with the community. And you know, that communication, this last year we spent 12,000, actually 5,100, but we're doing a bunch of things, so I've kept it up higher. It's a positive way, if it, you know, I see it a positive, and the communities, I believe, appreciates interaction. The next one down is computer costs. We had a 50,000 budget, we lowered it to 40,000, and 50,000 last year because we had to replace servers due to Microsoft changing and forced to replace servers and everything else. This year we're looking at hopefully getting council little laptops or convertibles, as they call them now, so that you can follow a lot of the stuff online and we don't have to print as much. And the dual use of that is that they'll be used for emergencies. They will become a resource to be used as ours and perhaps yours as needed. So it's part of, I kind of consider it part of EOC as well, to get that equipment in place in case this is the place which is where things are, you know, coming, and this is our emergency operations center. We have the required resources to operate when everything else is. So, audit costs have gone up a little bit, not significantly, like everything else. They do have to do a lot more work with me because there's so much more transactions now, so this year's audit is going to be interesting for that reason, because they have a lot more to cover. They do send me new people to get trained. We like sending them here quite often because I think they're stable and, you know, they get exposure to a lot of things, but costs are a bit higher. So on the next page, page 6, is that's where I put in the 0.5 fire chief. Emergency, what was the title you were using? Protective Services Director.
It's gonna need a big business card, I'll get that. should start when, July 1st?
Roughly mid-year.
Right.
Fire department volunteer training is next, which is hoping for the grant for 25, so our spending will be 25,000 more as well. Page 7.
Just to let council know that all of the emergency grants that UBCM has around fire training, fire smart, EOC grants, et cetera, those are all 100% grants. So.
Yes, thank you. Any questions this part, because I'm moving along nicely. Okay. The next one on page 7 is the Fire Smart Prevention Program. And that's another 25,000, 100% grant, but the cost is allocated there. So on the revenue side, of course, there's that 50,000 I put in. Okay, the next one down is animal pest control, and that is 8,000, but that falls into the protective services, so that'll help us offset some of those costs. But I left it in there, but it offsets our full cost for that role because it's part of that role. So that helps, right? If we can roll out different things on that.
Just out of interest, I noticed at Clinton Council, at a recent council meeting, apparently the village of Clinton used to have, they call it a perpetual dog tag. Where, and so you would come in, you'd get a dog, and you would come in and buy your dog license, and that was you only bought it once, and it was $40, I believe, or $50 for the life of the animal. And then they went to the yearly, and they recently voted to go back to the annual, to the perpetual one. And I gather from talking to Mayor Swan that it was just because of, it was cut down on the paperwork and staff time, et cetera, if someone just has to do it once. So just something we might want to think about possibly is to see if that might be something we might want to consider. What are the pros and cons? Councillor Anderson?
Do you recall, was there still a fee, or is it just one fee and it just went on forever?
It's one fee and it's for as long as the dog's alive. So it might result in more compliance rather than people, at $5 or $10 a year and just thinking, oh, well, I won't bother. I think we sell about 120 dog licenses a year, dog tags a year here, and from having gone door to door in this village numerous times, there are a lot more than 120 dogs in the village of Ashcroft. Kelsey, I see you again, Sue.
Like business licenses, animals are a very dynamic situation and change quite regularly, so perpetual licenses tend not to be as effective in situations that are dynamic like that.
Okay. Just throwing it out there as something to think about.
Your worship, as long as we don't have to return the money.
That was not mentioned in Clinton Council minutes.
Okay, sorry, my bad sense of humor. Page 8, there's no changes in comparison to, it's just a continuation of last year. Page 9 at the bottom is the change in the subdivision. We had about a 70,000 budget, and now that's going down to 5,000 because the project is finishing. Page 10. Before I move forward, I guess I should catch up the spreadsheet. I was good for the first few pages. So page 10 is the EV charger costs, level 2 charger 20,000 in there. So we'll see how it turns out. 2025, what are costs for actually getting that charger is.
So the costs, or the grant for the actual chargers was successful, and Charge North, I believe the group is called, that applied on a group grant for most northern communities, is now seeking funding for the installation costs. So they're quite hopeful that the entire cost of the purchase and installation of the chargers will be covered.
Because the NDIT grant for about $190,000, that covered the purchase, and they are still actively seeking other funding sources for the installation to try and reduce the net costs to the communities. So,
Just to be prudent, I left 20,000 in there, might be overstated, I might reduce it to 10, given the additional information, but that's what's in there for time being.
Can I just ask a question of the village foreman? Has there been any discussion around the eventual conversion of some all part of our fleet to electric vehicles for the village?
There has been just some general conversation throughout staff that we would start looking at our new purchases, starting to tend towards looking towards the EV vehicles, to what we could get to what it would fit into our fleet, to how well it would be used. The conversation has been taking place, yes.
To your knowledge, is there anything out there that would be something that we could incorporate into our fleet that would be similar to something we would be
Well,
looking to
there are
replace?
now trucks that are starting to come out and being put into place and stuff like that, so here through the next year and stuff like that. It will be interesting on what they do come out with. Cars and motorcycles have been the main thing, but trucks are starting to come out and be into place. How well they work into our system.
Yeah, your worship, in that respect, we don't want to be the first movers. You always want to wait for the first generation to sort of, particularly in trucks, and the current ones, you know, I like looking at EVs. We need to wait a little bit till the price comes down and is a little more comparable, and then go over the life of the, you know, there's some data coming out that over the life of the EV, it is actually cheaper. You know, Page 11. So after many requests over the years, we have moving to add a debit terminal to the pool. Yes. And when I called Mona Harris to ask for a new debit terminal, it's a funny story, and it's I was asked whether we needed it waterproof. I said it's not in the pool, it's in the pool.
Uh-oh, we're not thinking of starting a poolside bar or anything at the pool
At
or.
least not.
So seriously though, has there been an issue with, is it lack of good connections at the pool or?
It's the cost. There's also concerns from my end that, you know, once transactions go off wrong on the debit terminal, it's a lot of work on our end to reverse it and fix it and following up, and you run around these phone systems. So there was that concern. Like, I'm hoping when we do put it in the pool that, you know, it's done relatively well, right? Because if it becomes an issue where it's spending too much time, that would be a real concern. O&M is where the pool roof is budgeted, the 80,000 budget, and the hot tub is right underneath there. The hot tub, 172,000. If we get it. Heritage Park, when M has been reduced to 21,000 from 30,000, we had a couple of projects we finished last year, but now it's a bit further down. Curling Club project is next, 140,000 here. This is where the expense is coded. So that's the budget there. Not too many pages more to go. So page 12 is, now this is something we will be doing another set of asset management presentations, and I will be showing you, because the system is now fully designed and operational, we will be, I'll be showing you some metrics which show how well we're doing in covering our long-term costs. So this is the area where the reserves actually get put aside. So this year, machine and equipment has 150,000 budget, because next year we need to replace the sweeper, which costs about 350,000. The rest of the budgets are, 50,000 for the roads reserve, which we just started, and annual capital of 187,000, which is 17.65% of our total taxes, which go in there. This we do regularly. So I'll just move the spreadsheet down as well.
Just quick question for Foreman Benowitz. Does our current sweeper have any kind of resale value?
Yeah, our current sweeper is reaching the end of its life. No, there will not be much resale value.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
This is another piece of equipment which we made to run for years longer than. I mean, that's how we manage, but it's time. It's getting to the time where we're paying a lot to just fix it this year as well. So. And you notice it in the actuals if you look at, when you have time later to look at the O&M for heavy equipment. It's been expensive this year because of some of the older equipment. So back to asset management reserves, I will be going over this in more detail and comparing it to where we are. We are definitely in a deficit position and we need to pull up how much we set aside. This year, we are not reaching the targets. Hopefully, as things settle down, we can start putting a little bit more aside. And it's very important to keep that consistency, because otherwise we will reach a point where we won't have enough to pay for the pipe replacements and and those things will come due at some point. We are lucky that they're extending beyond our life, but this is why asset management is so important, and that's why it's been pushed so hard. And we are better positioned than most municipalities, but we need to get to the green area, as you'll see when we look at it. Page 12 or 13?
14.
The next one is the 25,000 for asset management as well. That takes care of the general operating fund. Now we're going to look at the water operating fund, which covers the water side of things. And the first one is the budget item there, 440,000, and that is our last year, incorporates our last year of increases. Okay, so actual was a bit higher, so I might increment it to both. This is the last 15% increase for water. So we are done with the increases now. And over a 5-year period, we did this, and it finishes this fiscal year. Next is the MFA interest, increased slightly. Then come the projects, the 533 grant, capital outlay from capital reserves, and then balancing those out. So when I present the BI reports to you, I take those out because it really confuses the numbers, because there's 500,000 coming in, 500,000 going out, another 250,000 coming from somewhere else. But that's how our statements run, where capital spending is incorporated into operating. So I try and take it out for your reports. So that's this year's project expenses, 833 anticipated, and further down, and you see 533 and 300 coming in on top. So that's the offset of those two. And that's the total water treatment plant intake and all of that, and the generator. That's the total cost. Next one down, common services. This is where we put in the 0.5 additional FTE, the labor role we talked about in the project summaries. Insurance has gone up significantly. 18,000 was our actual expense this year. I've bumped up the budget to 25. So large part of our increase. Now a lot of the costs are going to be going through this year for the first time. Like we had some coming part of the last year, but we get a full year of actual costs, which will give me a good feel for what actually things are. Things such as insurance and further down hydro, which is a huge bill, things like that. So by the end of this fiscal, we'll have a better sense of where things sit. Next one down is the hydro, $30,000 from 0 to 30 in that. So we are tracking that bill in the water. So we're not putting it together in the other bills. We segregated it and thrown it in water. Where possible, we like tracking things individually if we can, so we get a better picture of the full cost. Next one down is fiscal services. And short-term interest, we had budgeted 40, we spent 17, I'm budgeting 15. And depends when we can pay things off, but it'll be around there. If we keep up the same loan, I might have to, like I had mentioned in an earlier meeting, borrow some for cash flow and pay it back, because timing-wise, it takes a little time for the province to send us the money, which is owed us. So, page number 14. Water project capitalization has been 0, but there will be a capitalization amount there. I'll probably change this. Right now, our water project is what is bid is under what we call work in progress, because it's not fully signed off. As soon as it is, it's a more of an accounting thing. As soon as it's accountingly finished, what a way to put it, accountingly finished, it'll get transferred over to capital. And you see a number there. But it's not really of operational significance, it's just a transfer to capital. And sewer operating fund. So water, that's for water. Next up is sewer. Sewer user bills are going up 10%, and this is the second last year of increase. Next year 10% more, and that's it. Sewage grant is the 100% coverage for the lift station, and that underneath, when you look at expenses further down, you've got 1.38 going out, and just above that is the 50,000 SCADA cost.
Is there a time scale on the lift station project, or is it?
If we're approved.
No.
Your
Just wondering
worship,
how long something like this takes, because I have no idea. I wasn't here when the last big sewer treatment plant project was undertaken, so.
Your worship, the answer to that is unknown. Right now, they're still waiting to make sure that we have the grant, everything all in place, then the design point will have to be finished off and looked at what we can, and then it'll have to go out for contract. So, and then for bidding process, and then for starting, so
Right.
whether it got started this year is still unknown.
Right. Thank you. And I just had a question for CFO Bala. I know that when we talked about the increases in the water and sewer all those years ago, how are we now to what you were projecting 5 years ago in terms of, have we got, how close to parity are we?
We are close now, to be self-sustaining. I want to see it finished, so part of the reason why I hesitate to answer absolutely yes is because I need to see the costs come through from these projects. You increase the scale of our works quite a bit, so I want to see what the hydro is going to be, what the insurance is going to be, what the labor is going to be, and then that's from that point. We were, because we went so much under budget and we managed it well enough, we were going to, if you recall from last time, we were going to increase frontage rates significantly to cover. We are not doing that. So this looks adequate at this point. Our picture looks good. It goes back to asset management planning, and that includes replacing membranes in their cycle, which is 15 years. So all of that, and we'll be looking at that in more detail.
And do we know if there's going to be any way of quantifying after fully operation of the new water treatment plant, what if impact, I should say, the solar panels are having? Is there a way to measure that?
We know the design specification and what it does in a certain range, right? We don't have a meter per se against it. So we don't have the actual, we have the general, and which tends to underestimate because we get more sun than most other areas. So I'd be quite comfortable picking up the specifications on that. We won't have a meter because it just offsets our cost.
Right.
So we'll have to just estimate based on the
Thank you.
your wish.
Councillor Tui?
Thank you. So that 30,000, the new account for the hydro, that's where the offset of the solar?
That's right, it would have been, I put aside 30,000 as a budget.
Okay,
It would have been far higher
okay.
if we had.
40 or 50 or
50.
something, yeah, yeah,
So the budget, the actuals this year got put into pumping costs, I believe. I'll have to check where, but we've started getting bills which are pretty large on there as well. But yes, it would have been significantly more.
okay.
Okay, so I was on the last page. So the next one is a small change in the budget from 95 to 105,000, a 10,000 increase, sewage coverall and grading. This budget would have gone down further, but we have that project we're intending to do. The last two highlighted items are transfers, and I highlighted that because ideally, this is the other part of putting aside money. Ideally, all the frontage should be going to reserves, not being used in operation. This year we are doing lots of stuff, so if you use it in capital, it's kind of using it in capital purposes anyway. But if our utilities are adequate, all our frontages should be going to reserves to cover further. That's what frontages are for. For years, we've used those to just offset some of our actual operating costs. And hence we had fallen further and further behind. We were halfway at the level where we needed to be to actually cover the costs. And we were basically paying it from taxes. So people were getting bigger tax increases, but utilities were remaining same. But now the government's mandate is very clear. Senior government wants us to separate utilities and pay utilities from utilities and taxes for taxes. So that's why we are able to retain our tax increases to 2.5%, because we are not now subsidizing utilities from tax bills. It's a user pay system, so it should pay for what we use. The other one is the amortization expense. That varies year to year, and it's an accounting entry really. The accounting calculation of how much your asset depreciates over its lifetime. That is the first look at the budget. Any questions? And if I've missed anything, there's a couple of things which we need to cover further. The age pending.
Right, yes. So council had made two motions to defer two items to budget discussions. And one was the age-friendly assessment, followed by an age-friendly action plan, and the other was a trails master plan. So because these were to be decided at budget, they have not been incorporated into the current budget, and it will be council's will as to whether you want to proceed with those projects and incorporate those into the budget or not.
There are some grants available for planning for trails plan, the trails master plan. So if that is the council's wish, you can proceed. There'll be some offsetting if you are successful with those grants. I'm just trying to look at what was available, but yes, there's some grants. I'll have to check exactly how much.
An estimate for a trails master plan is approximately $40,000.
I'm just trying to see what the potential grant could be.
There's a federal one.
There's a federal one, but that's only 30%. Or 70-30.
Councillor Chu?
Thank you, Mayor Rowe. So we've discussed this, but one thing I think that we have to take into consideration, from what I understand, is the amount of time, right? We have a lot of projects still going. So, yeah, I have a better understanding of that now myself, of, yeah, it looks good, we can get all these things and have all these things happening in our community. But, yeah, like you were saying, you have to take a breather now and then?
This year we are full out.
Yeah.
Labor-wise, public works labor,
Mhm.
we're going 150%.
Yeah.
Particularly the training involved now in operationalizing the regulations and training and monitoring and getting all those SCADA systems working properly. There's a lot of time getting the chlorine system working properly, without air bubbles. There's a lot of time spent. Right now, we're still following up on deficiencies and back and forth, and that sort of things takes operationalizing of this big infrastructure project does take a lot of, and then all the other projects which are coming this year. So as far as capacity goes, absolutely we are full up. There's not more capacity. As far as administration and capacity goes here, we are also full up.
Yeah.
So it's nice to be able to look for other things, but I think at some point, you've seen the project list, have a look at it.
I think that's important, because I'm just starting to understand that myself, that we can tell the public that too, so that they have a better understanding of why things cost what they do and why we might be waiting on some projects and that sort of thing, because we are.
And grants are wonderful, we couldn't do a lot of what we do without grants.
No.
But even in the short time I've been on council, the reporting requirements, especially for the big grants, are so much more onerous that it is almost a full-time thing to look after those. So
Yeah.
while we do, and staff does a wonderful job getting grants for us, so thank you. But you load enough on with the reporting requirements, and now people are just behind the 8 ball. And I mean, the age-friendly grant process, I saw that play out in a neighboring community firsthand. And they're, even with an outside consultant doing the work, staff still has to give up a lot of time because they need to do research and provide facts and figures and contacts and have meetings, etc. And then at the end of it, you get a report or recommendations. Unless you are prepared to implement them and have the wherewithal to implement them, then it's just something that sits in a binder on a shelf. So I think you have to look very carefully, not just at the process, but down the road. Once we get this lovely report, will we then be in a position to actually act on it?
Yeah, I think that's really good.
To me, that's a really big thing, to be able to do something and then follow through with the next. Because as long as there's grant money available, it's easy to say, well, we'll do this. When the rubber hits the road and there's no grant money and now it's up to us to implement it, we have to be prepared to be able to do that. Because otherwise, why have we engaged on the process?
Yeah. And I think the other thing is too, that letting the public know that it doesn't mean things can't move forward and they can't be involved in doing things. There's lots of things they can do on their own. It doesn't all have to be done by council.
Well, it's like the students from Desert Sands Community School who did that Green Spaces presentation, and the gist of it was that they want to be involved in their communities, whether it's Cache Creek, 16 Mile, or here in Ashcroft. And they want to know, because they can't just go out there and do stuff. They want the adults around them, whether that's council or whether it's other bodies, to say, hey, we've got this idea, or you come to us with an idea and we'll see how we can make it happen. So, it's those partnerships.
Yeah.
And that's what the kids were really pushing for, which is great.
Yeah. I can see that being, yeah, really beneficial
Mhm.
of partnerships rather than us taking the lead. We don't have to do it all. And that's unusual for me to say.
Well, first of all, thank you. Do you need a SEPA call? I've got some in my bag if you want to throw
No.
them. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation. And does anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts? Councilor Gavin?
I have a question about the gas tax. The grant, it was 130,000, is it?
Yeah, we get about 130. This year they decided to give us, because it was election year or whatever, we are happy to receive more money. They gave us more money, which went basically to offset the STP plant project, which we had decided to proceed with.
So that has already been allotted?
Last year's has been an audit, so that's why the budget is down from 250 to 130 again.
The item about the gas tax offsetting the amount for the curling club?
Oh, that is a different gas tax, that's the TNRD, this is
Oh,
our
that's
own
the
gas
TNRD,
tax.
okay. So that's it's the same one as the curling club would apply for through the TNRD? Through
That's right, that's the one which is the area I.
Area I, right, okay,
So, yeah, that is gas tax too, but it's their gas tax money,
right.
which they're giving to us. We
Okay.
also get our own gas tax separately, which we've so far set aside. But now we're using all those funds to pay water
Right.
and pay off the debts and all of that.
Okay.
Each electoral area director, like Steve Rice or Sally Watson, gets a sum of gas tax funding, which they are able to use in their area at their discretion.
Right.
And they can either use it like Wallashin, the Soldiers Memorial Hall, the renovations that went on there, but they can also give it to municipalities within their area if they can prove or show that the facility that they want to give the money to is used by residents of area. So something like the Lytton Pool, for example, Director Rice has given funds to them over the years because it's used by people in Spence's Bridge, Kanaka Bar, etc. So that is a justifiable use of his gas tax fund.
There's lots of moving parts. One gas tax fund is going down
Yeah.
quite a bit and we're getting a little bit more.
Confused about which allotment is what, so, thank you.
And just a note about the gas tax funding, something that seems to keep coming up is, one thing that gas tax funding is not allowable for at any level is fire department or firefighting expenses or equipment. And this is an increasing push for municipalities to get the federal government to allow gas tax funding to be used for fire prevention, fire preparedness, especially for the small rural fire departments, which really struggle with the expensive equipment and the upgrades to the playbook, etc. So that's just something that might be coming, but I gather the gas tax funding, what it can be used for is only overhauled every 5 years, and it was just done about a year or two ago, so. That's right.
Mayor Roden, I can't say a lot about it, but what I can say is there's a restructuring going on with both NDIT as well as the gas tax. And there's some really exciting changes coming, and I'm hoping that in February or March, they'll be able to announce it. At the RAC meeting, we did approve all the changes that were presented on that date. And it can address quite a few of the issues that we're having as well, such as the curling club, such as the dog park, and trails connectivity. So I'm very excited about these changes. So hopefully we'll be able to, we'll hear about that soon, and then the launch would be in September. And from what I understand as well, there's changes with Steve Rice as well. And we can work the funding together. So, it's an exciting thing happening, and I'm just really hoping that they'll be, announcing that soon.
Well, that's interesting, because 5 years ago at UBCM, and it sounds like if you're going to announce it in September, it'll be at UBCM.
Launch.
And it'll be, they announced, was it their 15th anniversary 5 years ago? CON? CON, so do you happen to remember NDIT, were they celebrating their 15th anniversary 5 years ago?
I,
Was it their
is
10th?
it 5 years ago already?
It was was in Vancouver because that's when they announced the Fabulous Festivals and Events was the new sort of fund that was coming out. So it sounds like they've got another anniversary coming up in September of this year, and they might be announcing ABC.
So, Your Worship, if there are no further comments, I would just like to say something. We were able to get this done with a 2.5% increase, but this was really juggling things to make things work, and the impact of the last few years' savings and all of that. We've absorbed a lot of the expenses in there, but any other further increases would have to be reflected in tax increases. So just so that, not that, council isn't aware, I just wanted to reiterate that we have absorbed it and kept the, this budget at 2.5%, but it's unlikely further, if there are further increases in resourcing, that those would have likely fallen right down to the tax level. And at tax level, $10,000 is approximately 1%, 11,000 now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, looking at page 17, at all the items on page 17 and the priority article items on page 18, I mean, to see all that incorporated into the budget with a 2.5% increase is absolutely fantastic. So thank you to all staff, especially CFO Val, for being so fiscally on the ball. I wish I had you doing my books. See an answer.
Council, or Your Worship, Council had asked the question earlier whether these decisions need to be made tonight. Ideally, yes, but one that is important to make tonight is around the curling club, because the curling club is wishing to apply for a grant to NDIT for $30,000 to assist with this. With that grant, we still come up a minimum of $10,000 short. But in order to apply for the grant, they need to have a budget. So whether they move forward with that or not, the grant application deadline is early in February, I believe. And I know NDIT will take council resolutions after the fact, but with something as uncertain as whether you're willing to do a tax increase or not, it's not fair to the curling club to ask them to put forward a grant application without that certainty around budget.
So just to be clear, leaving the amount in the budget for the curling club, would that result in a further tax increase above the 2.5%?
I have incorporated that amount already in the 2.5, though some of those changes were, yes, they incorporated, and they paid not just from the current operating budgets, but they also paid from 60,000 CRF, the reserve fund, curling stuff. Club had some from prior capital reserves, the 17.65 which goes in there. So it's not necessarily all operating, but it is incorporated in the 2.5%.
Right.
What I needed clarity on was that we were proceeding and continuing to incorporate it in the budget.
Right. So anything over and above the 130,000, provided all the grant applications are successful, anything above that could involve a tax increase.
I will try and limit it to 2.5 and balance it through the surplus account, through our surplus account. So there is, that has been our policy, not a written policy, but our desire, the council desire to keep taxes at a reasonable increase. So that's what I will try. I'll have to rework some of the figures now that we have some more, but I will try and keep it. If it is, it's not going to be I'll try and keep it to that range. So it is incorporated. It was on the list, and so it was incorporated in that.
Thank you for the clarification. Councilor Davenport?
Is that 10 grand for the supports in that? I wasn't.
No, it's not. So
Okay.
that and the electrical work needs to be added on.
Okay. And CEO Yansu, you were talking about 10,000 is 1% increase of taxes.
Correct. Every $10,000 increase is a 1% tax.
10%.
I have also not incorporated the NDIT grant into it.
Right.
So when I'm incorporating those, to be fair, I'll also incorporate, presume that you're getting that done.
Your worship, some of the reports that I gave you on that with CFO and his numbers that he's using, if you look at the report, basically one's starting at $122,000 for a replacement and another one's $150,000, sorry, in the area. A replacement, one's $240,000. So at the time when CFO Bella was doing his report, we're basing on 130, but depending on what council would like, there is some variations in the compressors and stuff, and one might give us more energy efficient, and we might be able to get some rebates through hydro going the more efficient. So yeah, there is a bit of a balancing act here right at this point in time. So depending on what compressor, we might be looking at towards 150,000 plus the electrical upgrade, plus the roof, and now you're pushing 170,000. Just throwing it out.
Now, looking on this on page 19, the second one, the Norlock refrigeration for 152,000 plus taxes. Now, it says includes using the existing chiller frame, so would that involve putting something, is the chiller up on the roof? I don't know.
No, what we're doing is looking at the condenser unit. Right now, the refrigeration system works on city water, and it's a jacket cooling system, so it's constantly running water. What we're looking at is going to the same set of idea as the arena, where it's a condenser system, and it holds its water, so it's not continuously using city water for cooling. It holds its water, goes up, it condenses it through air and water and cools it, and we're not continuously running city water through.
And that would be on the roof?
The area only.
The area we really have without pushing it out into the park or drive area would be on the roof, and that's why we're trying to go to the roof area. Your worship, that particular system has two parts to it. So it really improves the efficiency because you can go to one compressor instead of having two running at the same time, which, half the energy consumption of those times. So there's a higher capital cost, but operating costs would be significantly lower for the curling club
And that's the
and for the village.
that's the Norlock refrigeration?
Yes, and a bit of a redundancy in it because it's a two compressor system. If one compressor does, then it would still be a secondary compressor to help maintain the cooling, whereas if there was a problem with the compressor motor, it would be down until it would be repaired, where this would give you a bit of 100% redundancy, no, but it would give you a redundancy situation.
So our decision right now is to either leave it in the budget or to take it. Council, discussion. We should make a decision tonight, yes.
So motion.
So, no, just a decision whether we are going to leave it in the budget, and pursue the grant opportunities available, or remove it from the budget and not go ahead with any grants, and basically the curling club is closed. Is my read of the situation, correct me if I'm wrong. Okay. Councilor Anderson?
Thank you. So can it be revisited in 2021 budget?
You mean defer it till 2021?
Yes, deferring it. I'm just thinking of these.
Well, it is already in the budget, so we wouldn't, and costs do go up. So the costs seldom go down on things like this. We still have to maintain our building. So we have an empty building there, but they're costing us. And I assume if the grant applications were not successful, then we could revisit if suddenly, for whatever reason, NDIT grant was not successful, we're not committing ourselves to going forward, we could revisit it at that point.
Yes, Your Worship, it's a budget, and it reflects your decisions, but if budget numbers are significantly changed, if you remember, we started this process of it costing $40,000 to do this, right? So, as long as you have the complete picture of the numbers, now we have 3 codes, and we now have not the quoted numbers for the beam replacement, but we have a general idea how much it's going to cost. So it's become a narrow range, and we kind of know. I think you have the information to make the decision.
Thank you. Councillor Judy?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to see us move forward with it. I think it's a very important thing for our community. I think that the curling club themselves are willing to work really hard towards this. They're quite passionate about it. We have that building that we have to maintain anyways. I see it as a good asset for Ashcroft. And I see 2020 as a huge year for us, for so many good things happening. So I think it's just one more good thing.
Thank you. Council.
I do see it as an asset, and it has been included in the budget with a 2.5 increase, and sounds like there might be potential grants down the way from NDIT, as Councillor Anderson's pointed out. I see Ashcroft is growing, so there's a lot of kids, I think, that didn't get to do curling this year, and with our hopeful increase of people coming to our town, there should be an increase, and hopefully, I agree with Councillor Tui that the curling club does seem to be putting forth an effort into getting membership and working with the village to get what needs to be done in terms of the upgrades and continuing with that. So yeah, it would be a shame to see it go, and thank you to CFO Val for trying to include it in as much as possible. 2.5 is not a great number. Everything increases, and it's nice to know that with maybe a few grants, we can get it all covered, so.
Thank you.
No, I agree, I think we should move forward with it, definitely. I curled when I was a kid, I enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to see it in the budget. I think we should leave it there for the time being. We certainly can revisit it if and when we have to. But I think for the time being, leave it in there, keep the increase at 2.5%, and hope that we are successful in obtaining the necessary grants and other funds to cover the work here. And also, I'd like to say, CFO Val, thank you. I really appreciate you started doing this, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, on page 16, the uncontrollable cost. Because I think that really sets it out, the things we have absolutely no control over whatsoever. The dumpster fire at ICBC, we don't know what that's gonna look like for us, but rates aren't gonna go down. So I think that's just a useful instrument to have there to show that there are so many things that we can't control and they do not go down in cost. And it's also nice to see that this is the final year of the water increase.
Mm-hmm.
That was quite the process 5 years ago.
Nobody was happy.
But it's paying dividends now. I mean, CFO Val said, the money we're not taking from taxes to offset that, we can now use for all these other things that are in here. So that, I think, is the message to get across, that we're now able to do all these wonderful projects that have staff running ragged, so I'm sorry about that. But we've just got so much on the go, and so much that's going to improve our community, and I think it's a nice mix of the things we're mandated to do, water, sewer, and the things that are nice to have, like the pool, like the curling club. So, all the things that make living here so nice. Any further discussion? No? All right, move to terminate this meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anstead, all those in favor? Opposed, carried. Get to bang again.